Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And thank you, Anita, for joining us and for sitting down with what we know to be your most favorite newsletter. We appreciate it.
And thanks to all of you for being with us. I hope you're enjoying a program that is running ahead of schedule. Ahead of schedule, not behind schedule. So that's excellent. Before we start,
I was fully looking forward to speaking at 11:30 at night.
Yeah,
so,
well,
yeah.
you know, some people know how to produce. Enough there. Before we start, you are known, at least around the West Wing. We have heard from everybody about the banana chocolate bundt cakes, the cookies, the brownies. Have you had any time in Chicago to hit any good bakeries?
No, and if there's anyone here who has recommendations, they should get them to me. Okay.
But no time.
Have no time yet. No.
Even in your cushy position now as an advisor to Future Forward.
It's amazing. I still have to work.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Well, let's
but
get
if
started.
anyone here knows a great bakery that's like walking distance downtown, just let me know. Okay.
All right, well, let's get started. Obviously, we're sitting down the day after President Biden's big speech last night. Can you tell us a little bit about how that speech landed to you? And you know, you were gathering with other Biden staffers these past 24 hours. What was the reaction?
Yeah. I think that the reaction in the hall last night really spoke volumes to how this party feels about Joe Biden, about what he has accomplished in one term, but also his lifetime of public service and his lifetime of being a Democratic Party leader. So it was emotional in the hall. I think the party we had after, the Biden staff party, was also emotional, but it was a good evening, and it was an appropriate way to start this convention and now to move forward with the rest of the convention's business, which is, as the president said, first and foremost, to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Where were you watching from?
I was watching from the hall itself.
On the floor? Or?
No, I was actually upstairs.
Okay. I was told by a number of White House staffers, people in the DNC, like people who've worked on the campaigns, that there were a lot of tears shed, that there were selfies being sent back and forth, people, you know, teary-eyed. Was it like that for you? Seeing the actual passing of the torch and the...
No, I think that the emotion that I felt last night and that many of us felt was just this enormous well of gratitude and affection and respect and admiration for the president. And, you know, he was a little teary, I think, at the welcome and at the reception that he got. It was hard not to be, because this is someone who has been since 1972 a leader of the Democratic Party and continues to be a leader, but clearly, you know, does see this as the time to pass the torch, and that's an emotional time for people. So.
Were you frustrated? Were some folks frustrated about the programming going as late as it did and the president being bumped out of prime time?
You know, we haven't run a live campaign since 2016, and clearly we may have forgotten a little about how to do it. I will say in 2020 we ran a campaign that had no traffic problems, as my husband likes to remind me. There were no traffic problems, and it was like clockwork. But of course, this is live, and everyone is together. So, you know, I think the DNC, the convention team, have said that tonight will be tighter, and you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think that nobody left, everybody stayed. People wanted to hear from the president, and even if it was a little late, it was the right way to end Monday night.
There was some suggestions from folks in your party that perhaps that schedule delay was intentional to try and push the president back a bit. What do you make of that?
Oh, I think that's ludicrous. You know, the convention had to start late because people had trouble getting in, and when the convention's first piece of business is to adopt the rules of the convention, the standing party, the platform, you need a quorum of delegates. So they had to start a little late. Everything kind of snowballed. As I say, we haven't done this live for 8 years, and you know, I think that the idea that this was a conspiracy is just ridiculous.
What was the mood at the party last night afterwards? Was there, you know, you've spent so much time working on the president's speeches over these past few years. How are you guys processing? Is there any sense of, you know, like mourning that this is the last time that you're going to give a big, massive speech like this in front of that kind of audience?
You know, this the Biden team and a lot of the people last night were people who were veterans of the 2020 campaign. No, they got no convention speech in 2020. They got no victory night when we kind of wrapped up the primaries. They didn't get an election night, okay? We had, at the end when the president finally was declared the winner, we had a car rally in Wilmington. So we didn't, and they didn't get an inauguration. So they never had that chance to really gather together and celebrate as a team. And I think last night was an important moment for that. People realize that it's not the last time they're going to hear from Joe Biden. Maybe it's the last time they're going to hear from him in this kind of format. But to be honest, they never got to hear from him in this kind of crowd in 2020.
Did you like the speech?
I did like the speech. I thought it was very Joe Biden, okay? It was not a joke, and there was no hyperbole in it. So,
let's talk a little about tonight. We're going to hear, obviously, in the primetime hour, we think, in the primetime hour, from President Barack Obama.
We're hopeful.
We're hopeful. And before that, former First Lady Michelle Obama. What is their job tonight as the sort of convention, the Democrats sort of turn the page and focus more on Vice President Harris?
I think what you can expect to hear from both of them, but particularly from former President Obama tonight, will be the case for Kamala Harris and the case made for why she is the best person at this time, not just from a perspective of a former president, but from someone who has known her for a long time. You know, I had not known until our vice presidential nominating process in 2020, the process that she had, campaigned for him. She volunteered and went to Iowa for him in 2008. So that relationship goes back a long way. And I think he will make that case, and that the former First Lady will speak to this moment as only she can, and why it is a critical moment for someone like Kamala Harris and people and her vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, to take the leadership reins. So there will be, I've seen some coverage today about bringing a hint of 2008. Barack Obama knows you don't go back in time, that you always go forward. So this will be the case in 2024.
Do you think there's anything to that comparison, though? The idea that the enthusiasm that she's generated in a short time, is it reminiscent to you of what was cresting in 2007, 2008?
I think every campaign is so different. It's hard to say, but there is no, there's no denying that there is a degree of excitement and energy and enthusiasm for this ticket that is, that you feel in this convention hall, but you're also seeing at her rallies. You're feeling, you talk to people who are making the phone calls or doing the hard work of organizing, and they're really feeling it and seeing it. And obviously, we're seeing it in the grassroots fundraising as well. So, it's great. Every campaign has its own dynamics, but the enthusiasm, energy, excitement, that sense of mission is really strong with this campaign.
Can you talk to us a bit about the current president's relationship with former President Obama? Obviously, there's been plenty of reporting that he's felt wounded by Obama's potentially behind-the-scenes maneuvering to push him out of the race. Is tonight an opportunity for Obama to extend an olive branch, to repair that relationship at all?
Lauren, they have been close, and they were partners for 8 years. And, I think it's very public record that, when the president awarded Joe Biden that Medal of Freedom, what he said, that, that's a deep relationship, and I'm just going to leave it there.
We saw the president, vice president together on stage at the end last night. We saw them on stage last week in Maryland at an event about lowering drug prices. How is her campaign now, running on their shared accomplishments? He talked a lot last night. He said it's not just Joe, it's Kamala too. How do you think she will run on the record and at the same time create some space for herself to make sure people know that she's a different candidate and it's a different campaign?
So it's the challenge for every vice presidential nominee who's running for president who has the incumbent president still in office. It's how can you be your own person while you're also still part of a team? She began this process last Friday when she started laying out her own economic proposals that some of which overlap with the Biden-Harris ones that she has been involved with, and then some of them push a little farther than anything the Biden administration and President Biden have proposed to date. And I think that that is a critical part of what she is going to continue to do between now and over the next 79 days until voters go finally to the voting booth. It's part of what she has to do as a candidate, is to establish what is her vision when she talks about moving forward. Where is she moving us forward? How is she going to do that? And I think she's very cognizant that that is her job to do, and that Thursday night, that's something I think people should look for in her speech.
Yeah, is there any inherent awkwardness or uncomfortableness in, her trying to establish herself independent of President Biden, but obviously existing in the fact that he's still the president and she's still his vice president?
No, Lauren, that is the question for every vice president who runs. I think that Vice President Harris has done a great job at, making clear the pieces of that agenda that they share, her respect, her affection for this president and what he has accomplished, her role as part of an administration that really has transformed so much of America, not just now, but for years and even decades to come, but that there are pieces of this that are going to be hers, and we will see that through the campaign. I don't think there's an awkwardness there at all. Joe Biden was vice president for 8 years. He certainly understands that people who are vice president are going to have their own ideas.
Before you left the White House, do you know if they had any conversations about this dynamic that he obviously knows so well? Like, did he give her sort of like permission structure to do what she needs to do? I
don't know if they've discussed it directly like that, but I would be very surprised, given the fact that they, talk a great deal.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if she's going to do things that are going to surprise him.
He's not on the ballot anymore, but do you see their legacies as intertwined in terms of what happens in November? Does that have a big impact on how his presidency will be viewed?
The pieces of huge change that he has put into place during his extraordinarily significant 3.5 years will be 4-year term. Some of them are so firmly ensconced at this time, it will be very hard for a Republican administration to roll them back. But there's no question that a Kamala Harris-Tim Walz victory will allow the progress and the foundation that has been built in this country for an economy that really works for the middle class, an economy that grows because the middle class grows. That foundation is going to be built on a lot more efficiently if there's a Democratic president.
Where do you think the race actually is right now? There's so much exuberance here,
yep.
And understandably, the trajectory of the race has really changed. Seems like Democrats now do have momentum. It's moving in the right direction for them. But is this still maybe closer than some delegates might feel that it is, given the sugar high of all the polling changing and the money that's being raised and having the convention this week?
I think one of the things that you heard from a lot of speakers last night, and something that every delegate, every Democrat needs to know, it's a very close race. And we shouldn't delude ourselves that it is somehow an automatic victory. You have to go win races. The vice president understands that as well as anyone. It's hard work. And that's why you've seen her out there doing the hard work. She and Tim Walz today are going to be doing an event up in Wisconsin. These aren't automatic. Polls in August aren't victories in November. You've got to go win these things. And I think that it's an extremely close race. It's a very divided country. Mm-hmm. And particularly when it comes to the Electoral College states, the battleground states, there are no sure things in politics, but the one sure thing I can say is it's going to be very close in those states again. And that even if Vice President Harris has a significant popular vote advantage, as Joe Biden did. Joe Biden won the popular vote by nearly 8 million votes. That doesn't necessarily translate into a landslide in the Electoral College or in those battleground states. Those were incredibly close. They're going to be close again, and we actually have to go do the work to win this thing.
Yeah, talk to us a bit about that. Obviously, the electoral map has changed a bit with her taking over. if you are deciding where to spend money right now, are there certain states that you would flood some more resources into, states that we weren't thinking about that you think there should be more of a focus on?
I think that the states that the Biden campaign have been spending money on, those 7 battleground states, are still going to be key targets. I think if you look at, if you look at the map, what has happened over the past, I guess, 30 days now, is that some of the pathways to 270 that looked like they were shrinking have been reopened again. So that the pathways to 270, there may be different ways to draw the combinations, but those are not sure-win states. They're more competitive, perhaps, than they were a month ago, but they're not, you can't put any of these. I'm a Washington Nationals fan. You can't put those curly W's in the win column quite yet, okay? So I would say that you have states that are more competitive and probably have become more competitive than they were, but that doesn't mean that the fundamental dynamics of this race have shifted all that much. The blue wall states are still the most logical way to go win the presidency.
But we've talked about, you and I have talked about North Carolina as a thing that you were excited about 4 years ago.
Everybody knows I'm obsessed with it. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Is that, because with Harris in the top of the ticket, is that a place where you think there's a real shot now? I mean, Democrats have not won that state since 2008.
I think, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada are all states where the dynamic improves, where the shift has created, some shifting dynamics that make those states very competitive. I'm not going to sit here today and tell you we can win them, but I will say that there's no question that there's states to compete in and compete hard. And there are also additional states and additional places that I think the campaign's going to keep a close eye on. I will tell you that if you had talked to me in August of 2020, I certainly wouldn't have seen Arizona as a place where we were going to end up investing huge amounts of resources. I just would not have said, oh yeah, let's go win Arizona this year. But it opened up, and when it opened up, the campaign had the resources to go in there and to go in there heavily. And I think that the Harris-Walz campaign will have the resources to go make that kind of play as additional opportunities open up if they do. Mm-hmm. It's a very tight race.
You obviously oversaw communications in the White House. President Biden didn't do a ton of interviews. He did often take questions from the pool. We haven't seen Harris do an interview, and she hasn't engaged quite as much with the pool reporters. If you're advising her on her media strategy, does she need to talk to reporters more? What should that look like for her?
Oh, I think the people who are advising her on her media strategy are excellent, and they will do a very good job putting together a plan. I mean, Lauren, the circumstances of this campaign are so dramatically different from any campaign before. She became the general election nominee, basically, realistically, the nominee a month ago. She had to put together a campaign. She had to go through a vice presidential vetting process and a vice presidential selection process. She was then, at that point, introducing both herself and her vice president to the country and rolling right into a convention. Now that is a pretty big list of things to get done for anybody. I am sure that as we move forward, you will see her engaging in all kinds of different ways, I'm sure, with the press. But it's a
preferably
it's a
with
short
West Wing
campaign.
Playbook.
Pardon?
Preferably with West Wing Playbook.
Oh, I will certainly pass that on to her people. I even see some of them right here.
Ian, I see you back there.
No one is better at reaching the swing voters than West Wing Playbook.
It's absolutely true.
You left the White House just a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. You're now a senior advisor at Future Forward. We heard there were a couple farewell events that took place different places around the West Wing. And we heard about one in particular in the EEOB. There's a thing, I guess, called, what, Fridays at 5?
Fridays at 5 is a staff meeting that we used to do, which are press, communications, digital, frankly, anybody who wanted to come and kind of find out what was going on. So I'm a big believer that if people have information, they're going to function better. So that is Fridays at 5. Sometimes we canceled it if it was the Friday before a holiday weekend. It was like, no, why don't you guys just go and have some fun?
Okay, but this one was a bake-off, and it was in your honor. It was sort of a farewell event. It was well attended, I understand. And
I just want to say there are some of the most talented bakers. You guys are laughing. I am telling you that there is some extraordinary talent. And then the speech writing team came in, I think, with a pretty great set of baked goods. We had done a bake-off in December that unfortunately turned highly competitive because you were talking about very highly competitive people in politics, right? So people went negative on each other. They did ads. They got reporters to do testimonials. It got out of control. So this one was being done in the spirit of community and not competition. So it wasn't even really a bake-off.
But then,
just to be accurate.
So I understand people went around, they spoke about their baked goods, they said some nice words about you, you spoke, and then you spoke again, and you delivered. Oh, I've heard that people are still talking about this farewell address. That was memorable, or someone called it epic. And you mentioned the Godfather.
Right after Washington, people.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But you mentioned the Godfather. You said, tell me if I'm getting this wrong, that life in the White House or in Washington politics, it's not really West Wing, it's not really House of Cards, it's not really Veep, it's the Godfather. Can you tell us a little more?
No, that's not accurate.
Oh.
Okay, not accurate. I did raise issues around House of Cards and the idea that the Speaker of the House of Representatives would push a reporter in front of a metro train and not have his security detail anywhere. I mean, if you've worked on Capitol Hill, you're like, where's the security detail when he's doing this? But no, my point was actually different. It was that there are a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, a lot of books written about politics, but that actually, if you want to learn about the effective use of power and how to view relationships and political relationships and power, that The Godfather is actually, so it's not about Washington politics, it's not about the West Wing, but it's about the use of power. Okay, it is about some very invaluable lessons in it that I just thought people should carry forward. And the most surprising and very upsetting thing was how many people on this staff had never seen the movie, okay? I mean, it's like, folks, AFI, one of the greatest movies ever. And so I was touched because I started getting texts from people saying, well, I just watched the movie for the first time. And so I feel like, in my own little way, I accomplished something with my staff, yeah.
Okay, but tell us why The Godfather. Okay. It sounds like you're trying to say.
Notes. Okay.
Please share.
Yeah. I've got the notes that I used that day. So, okay, so there's some lines in it that are just really worth remembering for people who are in politics. Never hate your enemies. It affects your judgment. Okay? And this goes very closely with one of the greatest lines of all time. It was never personal, it was always business, okay? That if you're making decisions from an emotional place, you are making bad decisions in politics, okay? It is not personal, it's business. Treat it that way and don't hate, okay? It affects your judgment. Another one of my favorites, revenge is a dish best served cold, okay? It might take you a while, but you will get your opportunity. And then if you're processing things the right way, you will choose not to exercise that revenge. Okay, but you don't need to do it. What I told the staff was you don't need to go get revenge right away. You can pick your times and just wait for your moments.
I think, I don't want to interrupt you because you're kind of on a roll, but yeah. I think, it struck some people I've heard that this wasn't maybe apropos of nothing, that maybe there was some subtext to what you were saying in talking about revenge and talking about studying the use of power and leverage. Is that a fair assessment?
I just want people to understand how to be more effective at politics. For instance, when the Godfather says to Michael, don't forget, the one who brings you the meeting from Barzini is the one who's betrayed you. I'm paraphrasing, okay? So all you Godfather people out there, don't come banging on me that I got the quote wrong. I'm paraphrasing. However, there's there's a very natural piece of that in politics, which is the person in the meeting who is yelling the loudest about something that leaked is almost certainly the person who leaked the information, okay? And I'm just telling you, decades in politics, that is the truth, okay?
And there were a couple other recommendations, right? Further reading, All the King's Men.
All the King's Men is the greatest book about politics ever written, ever. So if you had to read it in middle school or high school and you hated it, go back and read it again. It is everything you need to know about politics and, most importantly, opposition research. Okay, there is always something.
Well, I guess we're all going to have to go watch The Godfather.
If you haven't seen it, Lauren, watch it.
We know that a lot of White House staffers spent that weekend watching it. Yeah.
Binging, yeah.
Thank you very much for making the time to be with us. Thank you all for making the time to be with us, and stick around. We have some more great programming coming up. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
Thank you.